I have been with my partner for 7 years. We initially met online, and after meeting in person a few times and realizing our affection for one another, we found it promising to move in together. I moved from California to Pennsylvania to be with him throughout graduate school. All was seemingly well during this time. I have never really had any reason to not trust him. I encouraged him to very much so, to try his best to make friends, or to explore hobbies on his own outside of the various ones we share, because I have my own passions. And I found we connected most when we met in the middle through conversations about these passions, through the act of explaining or showcasing what we've taken in or learned. Throughout these 7 years, he has struggled with very low self-esteem. And though I don't necessarily think of myself as the pillar of self-love, the depth of mine doesn't reach the low perception of his self-value. Because of this, he has seen and stopped seeing both a counselor and a therapist, and has been on medication to help for the last 6 months. Things were seemingly well between us, and continued to be pretty fluid. We continued to share things, and take long walks, and were pretty open-ended about where we stood in the relationship. If one was feeling a bit of an ebb, the other would pick up more of a share, and vice versa. However, things took a bit of a dip about 2 days ago when I felt the ebb and asked him about it. Initially, he said there was really nothing wrong. And perhaps I was just feeling this way because with our schedules we haven't been able to see one another for long periods of time like we are used to, which is true. But the feeling continued to irk me, and when I asked about it a second time, he confessed to me he had begun talking to another girl from another country via Instagram direct messages. And though things between she and him never crossed the boundaries of platonic friendship, he really loved the initial rush of someone asking him questions about his favorite movie, his favorite album, his favorite book. All things he and I already know very well about one another. I asked if he'd sent any selfies, or anything risque, and he said no, though I can't confirm, because he deleted the messages. A good deal of me believes him, because of how open he was about the initial conversations to begin with. We slept apart, and I just felt really confused the entire night, because I couldn't really resonate with wanting that sort of attention from someone else. If anything, his yearning for that type of attention sort of hurt. It felt like I wasn't doing enough, or giving enough. The next morning, though I don't have an Instagram, and am not on the app, I went to check his using the desktop version, and found that posts where he once called me the love of his life, or a specific post with a gift I gave him that once said, "Greatest gift from the greatest girl," were still on his profile, but the words, girlfriend, or love of my life, were completed erased. With this realization, my confusion and hurt turned to very real heartache. I called him and asked if he had deleted these words from the specific posts, and with shame, he said yes, he did. When I asked why, he said it was because he just didn't want the attention from the girl asking him about himself to be disrupted if she found out he was in a long-term relationship. I guess this is where I asked the obvious and questioned why someone who is just asking about your favorite books, movies, etc., would be driven away by the fact that you have a girlfriend. And he said he didn't know why he did it, and that it was a massive mistake. At the risk of seeming toxic, and I will take full accountability for seeming so or being so, I asked him to please deactivate his Instagram for the time being while we sort through this, his Twitter as well. He did, and though I was feeling a bit of relief about that, I couldn't help but feel a bit saddened that he didn't choose to do that on his own for the benefit of our relationship. He had to wait for me to ask, which again, just made me feel like such a toxic and controlling partner. 2 things I always strive to be so far from. When he got home from work, we discussed everything at massive length, and he continued to swear up and down that these conversations pertained strictly to music, movies, and books, and he didn't have interest in her. Just interest in the initial rush of the attention he was receiving. We read a few articles, and he broke things down to me as his self-esteem has never been lower. Despite his career as a doctor being at a high, and his finances in order, he felt things with his music weren't taking off. And with that came a feeling that he wasn't special, and it was nice for someone to make him feel that way. I felt shame and asked him if I wasn't doing enough or giving enough to him to make him feel that way. He said, I defiantly was. But my love, and attention and affection, became a pillar he could rely on, and got used to, so with new attention came a rush. And he liked that. I asked him if he wanted to be single and find that rush in dating new people. And he kept insisting that that's so far from what he wants. He wants to remain a couple and do all he can to work on these things together. Though I can't help but correlate that feeling he enjoys with the feeling of a first date. Which hurts, of course. I told him I didn't really see how we could move past this because there was nothing much for me to make an attempt to work on moving forward. This seems to be a self-stemming problem that I emphasize with, but just don't want to be on the receiving end of the counter effects. So though it is incredibly uneasy to begin to think of how difficult it'll be to begin again, it is just as difficult to think about how difficult it would be to stay and try to rebuild back up an issue that I feel like just a bystander. When it comes to, this has all been very painful, and if this comes to an end, I just want it to be as civil and as possible. He deserves to love himself, but not at the expense of the love we have between us. I deserve love that is stable and comforting, and not laced with newfound paranoia. Despite this all, my heart is still very much in this, of course, and he has been very vocal about how it was just one mistake. Nothing happened, we can work through this, etc. And I secretly keep hoping he will make a step, any step really, to showcase these words and implement action, seek a new therapist. Find the two of us a relationship counselor, buy a book on self-help or on how couple conquer affairs, anything at all. Without me having to be the one to ask him. I just want him to have that yearning that he continues to say he has, but instead of saying it, I was him to show me. That makes me irrational or just plain dumb. I believe to be in a state where I can handle either answer. Or something completely different just the same. Do all think I'm blowing something completely out of proportion? Given how this was an exchange of conversation between him and another girl for just a few days. And his erasure of me on his profile was only for about 2 days? This has been a first in this relationship, this has been a first in my life, truthfully. I just felt completely vulnerable and isolated. So me and my girlfriend have been together for about a year now. It's been a big adjustment, but I think we've done well so far. I had 2 kids before her and she isn't used to kids, but I think she's doing well and I think my kids really like her. I'm a widower, my wife passed away a few years ago from cancer. It definitely hit me like a truck and took me a while to recover from. It took me a really long while to get back out there, but I eventually did a few years ago. My daughter is 13. She is in middle school now and is obviously growing. So usually on Thursdays after I drop off my kid and I do some chores, me and my girlfriend usually have a lunch date. Just so you know, this is not at all something that happens all the time. I try my best to be both mom and dad, but I'm still figuring it out. Lately my daughter been moody and very emotional. I had a thought that it could be her period because she's getting to that age on Thursday. A few hours after I dropped her off, I got a call from my daughter, and soon after the school, because she had ended up getting her period in school. She was really upset and crying, and she said that she was really embarrassed. I quickly went to go pick her up and shot my girlfriend a text that I couldn't make it and had to go pick up my daughter. I was low-key freaking out, and that's why I was pretty brief, so I rushed over there really quickly to go pick her up. She was in tears. I brought her home. She got cleaned up. My girlfriend came home while she was in the shower and I explained the situation, but she was still mad. I really wasn't expecting her to be mad. I don't really feel that I stood her up. I still sent her a text. It was really just under heat of the moment and I was really focused on one thing, and it was an honest mistake. She lost it on me, saying that it was a move to leave her hanging like that and not even answer the phone when she was calling her to see why I set her up. I never received a call from her. If she did, I triple-checked. I said I apologize for that, but I was in a rush to go to the store before I went to go pick up my daughter and I was just focused on one thing. She said that it wasn't an excuse to stand her up. She said that it was just a period. The school gets her a change of clothes and a pad, they have it there, and it wasn't an excuse to be so disrespectful, because she was taken care of. I tried saying that she probably just wanted to be in the comfort of her own home and she was really embarrassed, so I should go pick her up. She's still really upset at me, but I really don't get why, given the circumstances. I feel like this was justified. Then I stopped arguing with her to go check on my daughter because she was out of the shower. Me and her talked and everything, and now she's okay. Background about my sister. 2 years ago, my sister was killed in a car accident. She was riding with a friend to the mall, the friend's parent was driving. And teenage boy plowed through a red light while texting on his phone and hit the car my sister, Carrie, was in. Carrie was killed instantly and her friend, June, was in a coma for 3 weeks before her parents took her off life support. When Carrie passed, I was devastated and angry and just not in a good place. Carrie and I had been extremely close. Despite a 7-year age gap between us, we enjoyed a lot of the same shows, we went to concerts together. We volunteered together, and I took it upon myself to guide Carrie like any big sister would do. Our parents were extremely busy with work most days and Carrie and I would often cook together and do crafts when we weren't too busy with school work. Carrie wanted to be a NICU nurse when she grew up and I helped her find a volunteer position at a local hospital to help get her gain some experience being around patients. In short, Carrie was my sister and best friend, and when she passed, I was a mess. The last craft Carrie and I made together was a set of candles. We bought the wax at a local craft store and we both made each other a candle and decorated the jar it was in. That was the day before she was killed. At her funeral, Carrie was buried with the candle I made her. The candle Carrie made me sits on my desk next to my favorite picture of her and I together at the beach. Or it did, until last week. Background about my boyfriend. I met my boyfriend about 1.5 years ago, about 6 months after Carrie passed. I wasn't looking for a relationship, I was still grieving my sister's death. But Eugene came along and it was love at first sight. He was extremely supportive, let me cry on him when I needed to, didn't push me into getting over grieving or anything. He was extremely gentleman about everything and very, very patient. After 6 months of seeing each other pretty regularly, we made it official. Eugene came into my life at a very low point and he has always been very respectful of sentiments I keep from my sister. Never asking me to take them down, always giving me space when I needed to cry. Eugene, along with most, if not all, of my friends and family know about Carrie's candle. There was a point after she died where I would take the candle with me everywhere out of fear that someone might light it, or steal it. Or who knows what. The point is, that candle was and still is a very important part of my life and something that my sister made for me and me alone. When Eugene and I moved in together about 4 months ago, I packed away most of the reminders of my sister and put out the candle and picture on my desk. I felt that this was a huge step because when I'd lived just by myself I had pictures everywhere and a few knickknacks laying around from my sister. I wanted to make Eugene and I's home our home with just a small part of my sister there. Eugene understood and was very supportive. Last week, we had a massive winter storm that knocked out power. We didn't have power for 3+ days. The power was knocked out at Eugene and I's house while I was at work, which did not lose power. Eugene texted me that he was going to light some candles and try and get a generator, so we could have some for of power or at least be able to charge our phones / use lights / etc. Now, we have probably 30+ candles in our house. I am a huge fan of sales and when Bath & Body Works has a candle sale, I like to stock up and get a range of scents. We have candles scattered all over our house. In the room where my desk is, there are no candles aside from the one Carrie made me. None at all, and there never has been. This room is also downstairs, where Eugene doesn't spend a lot of time, his desk is upstairs. When I arrived home from work last week, I noticed a bunch of candles burning in our living room, safely. Always monitored and not near anything that could ignite. One of these candles was the candle that Carrie had made me. I burst into tears and when Eugene heard me crying he came out from the bedroom, where he was lighting more candles, and asked what was wrong. I was a wreck and couldn't get any words out. When he tried to calm me down, I shoved past him and locked myself in the room where my desk was and just cried. I don't know how he could be so stupid. He knew and I thought he understood how sentimental the candle was and how much I cherished having a candle that my now deceased sister had spent time making with me just a day before she was killed. I haven't been able to speak to Eugene since it happened, Tuesday of last week. He has tried to explain why he did it, because he needed candles to be able to see, but I just can't wrap my head around it. He hadn't gotten into the large candle stash I have upstairs right by the living room where Carrie's candle was, but went downstairs, out of the way to grab the most sentimental, cherished item I have. The candle was burning most of the day while I was at work and is now melted and pretty much gone. I do still have the jar it was in, but I can't look at it without bursting into tears. Eugene says it was an accident, but I just don't believe that. He said he was getting around to lighting the candle surplus we have upstairs, but just hadn't gotten there yet. After being home 6 hours alone with no power. I am heartbroken and feel like this is a major slap in the face. I feel disrespected. I feel like he disrespected my sister. I just don't know what to do. I don't feel like I can forgive him for this. My wife and I have been together for 3 years. I have a daughter from my previous marriage. She's 14. I also have a stepson who tends to be rude at times but civil enough around adults. He's 16. He and his stepsister get along well. No arguing. No yelling, even better than most siblings I know, which is great, and it's quite a relief to see them loving and respecting each other. We have 2 bathrooms in the house. My daughter only uses the smaller one, since it's always available, unlike the main bathroom that me, my stepson and wife often use. I've recently received some money and decided to renovate the small bathroom that my daughter uses, since she complained about things needing to be fixed. I started the renovation 2 days ago, while my daughter uses the main bathroom as an alternative. There were no issues until my wife pulled me aside saying my daughter's been leaving period products inside the bathroom, and it wasn't right 'cause my stepson would see them. I asked my wife for more clarification, and turns out my daughter gets rid of her used pads by putting them in the trash can inside the bathroom. I told my wife there was nothing wrong with that, so what's the problem? She gave me a look, called me an ignorant, then dropped it. This morning she looked upset and told me my stepson went inside the bathroom after my daughter got out, and probably saw her used pads in the bathroom. I asked if she meant the trash can, and it was confirmed. She then proceeded to tell me to ask my daughter to stop using the main bathroom even though the small one is still in the process of being renovated. I absolutely lost my shit and told her she was making a ridiculously unreasonable demand. Told her it's my daughter's house too. Where is she supposed to go if she can't use both bathrooms? We started arguing back and forth until she said she'd talk to her, but I told her to stop it. She just kept giving me the cold shoulder for hours now, even though my stepson said nothing about this issue as she claims it to be. My wife said she was trying to be a parent, but I treat her as an outsider to my daughter. That's not true. I might have been harsh on her, but in my opinion she wasn't trying to parent, she was being unreasonable. I might be wrong, I just don't see her point. My wife is an incredibly private person, but that doesn't mean she can get others to follow. The trash can we have has a lid. It's a step-on trash can that doesn't require hands. My stepson isn't even aware of what his mom's talking about. He can barely look around, he always has his phone glued to his face, and he doesn't pay attention to anything.